Check their website for special events coming in late July where chefs influenced by Kurt will be invited to take over his kitchen for the night. Since we have more time on the podcast here, I want to expand this story a little bit. Alexander Eisele tells a fascinating story on the real reason that Kurt Eisele wound up in the hospitality business.
So the question always comes up, Kurt's very much into car racing. You see that there's posters all over the place. That is his passion. We actually sponsored a car, when times were really good back in the late 90s, early 90s. We sponsored a car at Road Atlanta and whatnot. But you have to wonder, why didn't he go into the car industry? Well, the truth, we knew why, in a sense, but not the real story. And we kind of put that together as we talked about it. So he has a family of 6, and like I said, they grew up, in the 40s, early 40s, where their city was bombed and stuff, and there was a big presence of U.S. soldiers in the area, and blah blah blah. And they didn't have a lot of money, obviously, and feeding 6 kids is a lot. So my father's father, my grandfather, his father, I think he's brilliant for this. He convinced my father that the car industry was just a fad, that it was not something that was going to last. And so I always kind of wanted. I didn't take that. I just thought it was a silly answer. I thought my grandfather. I thought he was smarter than that, right? He wouldn't. He didn't believe that, but especially because Kurt comes from Stuttgart, which is the home of Mercedes and Porsche, so very big car towns. And so it made sense that would, it would pique his interest. So my grandfather convinced, I think, 4 of the 6 kids to go into the hospitality industry. Think about it. They had a problem feeding all 6 of the kids. In Europe, especially, when you work in the kitchen, you don't work half a day. You work all day. So you go in like at 8 a.m. until 2. You get like a 3-hour break, and then you go back from 5 to 9. So you work full, double shift. When you get in the morning, they feed you breakfast. Lunchtime, they feed you lunch. When you come back at night, they feed you dinner. So my grandfather had a way to take care of his family, which I give him total props for, feed his kids by not feeding them, by putting them in the right industry where they got, they got 3 square meals every day, and it didn't cost my grandparents anything. So it's brilliant, right? In a sense, they were taking care of the family. In a sense, it's a little weaseling. But that's the reason Kurt didn't go into the car to be a mechanic. That's what he wanted to be. But he was convinced. His father convinced him that there was no future in that. People eat all the time, so you always have a job.
I just got cold chills.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Isn't that great?
That's a great story.
That's a great story. And
That's a great story.
I was never. It's funny. It was growing up. It was never told that way to me, because I don't think any of us really realized it. We thought about it after the fact. That's why he did it. He did it so he would feed his children. It was always just that he's a mean, his grandfather was mean, he's very stern, he's German, he came back from the war going, no, you're going to do like, because his uncles were in the hospitality industry, you're going to carry on the family tradition. No, it had nothing to do with that. It was just because to feed his kids.
Scott Slates, Georgia.